How do I get persistence in my life? Some days I feel like I can do it all, and some days I feel like everybody is ahead of me. I want you to understand something. Life is not a race. I'm sure you've heard that cheesy quote about life being a journey. Well, it's absolutely true. You're not racing anywhere. So slow down. Stop looking around at what everyone else is doing and focus on where you are and what's important to you. You're going to hate this advice, but it absolutely works. You must come up with a morning routine that you do every single morning, or at least more mornings than not, that puts you in control of yourself and in control of your day. This is what I do, and I cannot explain the power that I get from starting my day off and being bigger than my excuses and being in control. First and foremost, wake up on time. When that alarm goes off, get your butt out of bed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Why is that important for persistence? The reason why is because the first decision that you're making of the day is to actually get up and get moving. That means you are persistently bigger than your excuses. You are persistently bigger than feeling lazy. And you are persistently beating the feelings that typically stop you. The second thing that I want you to do, before you look at your email, before you answer your phone, before you start surfing Vox and Vice and BuzzFeed and, Teamstream and checking out the sales on Zappos and looking at your Facebook newsfeed, before you pick up the damn phone, please, 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 figure out your 2 priorities for the day. These are the things that matter to you. Whether it's saving money and making sure you're focused on that, or showing up at work and being a contributor, or whether it's changing how you treat your spouse or your kids or the person that you're with, or heck, getting to the gym because you said you would. Whatever it is that your 2 priorities are, put them in your head before you pick up the phone. Why? The reason why is because of persistence. The reason why is because I want you to have a good day. Do you know what makes for a bad day? What makes for a bad day is snoozing, starting your day off late, starting your day off tired, starting your day off by mainlining everybody else's news feed on social media and looking at everybody else's life and saying to yourself, oh my God, they're on vacation, or gosh, they look so great, or their friends are so fancy, or my gosh, they've got so money. You start off your day looking at that shit, you're never going to have a good day. You got to start off your day by getting up on time, figuring out your priorities, and then getting to work on them. Do not pick up your phone until you have done those 2 things. I think the single biggest reason why people have bad days is because they start them off by looking around at everybody else and seeing what they're doing instead of having the focus and the discipline to actually start your day off with you in control and with your priorities front and center.
Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And the reason I wrote that was because I had this client, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I spent 20 hours a week for 25 years listening to people tell me about their lives, and those people were people who were just barely hanging on to the bottom of the world, up to people who were so successful you can hardly believe it, like the entire gamut of people. With regards to comparing yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today, this old client of mine, he was about 85 when he came to see me, and he was a financier and a kind of a mathematical genius. He made these little pendants out of a mathematical symbol for the most beautiful mathematical equation that was ever written. He made them out of gold, and he would hand those out. And he had studied psychology as a young man, and he introduced me to this concept that I didn't know about, called the Pareto distribution, which, see, I'd been taught as a psychologist that most human characteristics were normally distributed, right? So most people were average and some people were extreme. That's a Pareto or a normal distribution. Intelligence is like that, and height, there's more people of average height than very tall or very short, and weight is like that, and lots of things are normally distributed, and psychologists tend to assume that everything is, but it isn't. Creative products are distributed in a Pareto distribution, and that's a whole different thing. And it's really important to know this. It's another fundamental fact, the knowledge of which can sort of transform the way you conceptualize, let's say, the political landscape. So here's an example of the Pareto distribution. There's a rule of thumb that if you run a company, that 20% of your employees do 80% of the work, or that 20% of your customers are responsible for 80% of your sales, or that 20% of them are responsible for 80% of the customer service calls. Same thing. But that's not exactly the rule. The rule is worse than that. The rule is, in a given domain, the square root of the number of people operating in that domain do half the productive work. So you think, well, you have 10 employees, 3 of them do half the work. It's like, yeah, okay. What if you have 100 employees? Then 10 of them do half the work. What if you have 1,000 employees? Then it's 30. And if it's 10,000 employees, then it's 100. And this actually turns out to be a rather ironclad rule. It applies across very, very many situations. It applies, for example, to the mass of stars and the size of cities. So you can see how universal it is as a law, and it's something like those that have more get more, and those that have less get less. That's the Matthew principle, right? To those who have everything, more will be given. From those who have nothing, everything will be taken away. And the economists sometimes call that the Matthew principle. And so what that lays out is a world that's rife with inequality. So you hear this idea that I think it's the 85 richest people in the world have more money than the bottom 2 billion. That's a Pareto distribution phenomena. And you might say, to hell with capitalism for producing that. It's like, sorry, you got your diagnosis wrong. It's a natural law. It's no matter what society you study, you get a Pareto distribution of wealth. You get a Pareto distribution of number of records recorded. You get a Pareto distribution of number of songs written or goals scored. Like any creative product has that characteristic. And it's partly because as you start to become successful, let's say, people offer you more and more opportunities. And as you start to fail, people move away from you and you plummet. And so, okay, so that's rough. So what it means is that there is always a landscape of inequality. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything about it, although I am saying that we don't know what to do about it. That's the thing, because you can modify the Pareto distribution of wealth, let's say, but we don't know how to do it without maybe disrupting the system so completely that it collapses, which is what happened in the Soviet Union, for example, and in Maoist China. They were trying, at least in principle, to adjust inequality. But the cure was far worse than the disease. And the truth of the matter is, we actually don't know technically how much inequality there has to be to generate wealth. We can guess, and you could say, well, there should be less, and you might say, well, there should be more. If you're left-wing, you'd say less, and if you're right-wing, you'd say, well, we'll just let the inequality flourish. But we do know that it's inevitable, and we also know that we don't know how to regulate it. So, there is inequality. What that means is there's always going to be people around that are better at something than you are. And that's a problem, because you can get jealous and you can get bitter and you can get resentful, and worse, you can get hopeless, because you look like I have this friend of mine. He told me something so funny. He was decrying his lack of success in the world, and he compared himself to his roommate. And he said, his college roommate was doing much better than he was. And his bloody roommate was Elon Musk. It's like, oh, you're not doing as well as Elon Musk. Well, you can see it would take it rather personally, because they were roommates and everything. It wasn't like he was doing badly. Like, he was doing pretty damn well. It's like, I'm not as good as Elon Musk. It's like, yeah, well, you and like 7 billion other people, But I thought it was instructive because you have to be careful who you compare yourself to. Now, you can't just not compare yourself to successful people, right? Because then you don't have anything to aim at. Well, anyways, my point is you need an ideal because you have nothing to aim at, but an ideal is a judge, and you always fall short of the ideal. So how the hell can you have the benefits of having an ideal without having the crushing blow that goes along with having the judge that always regards you as insufficient? So I was trying to work that out in the chapter, and this is something I've had to work out a lot as a clinical psychologist. It's like, well, let's say you need a goal, but we don't want to let your distance from the goal crush you. So you got to set up a goal, and then you got to break the goal down into parts so that you can move towards it, and you have a fairly high likelihood of doing it. So that's a bit of practical, I wouldn't say advice, it's because it's better than advice. It's some practical knowledge about how to go about achieving an aim. Set a high aim, but differentiate it down so you know what the next step is, and then make the next step difficult enough so you have to push yourself past where you are, but also provide yourself with a reasonable probability of success. It's also what you do with children, right? You want to push them because they need to grow up and be more than they are, right? But you don't want to crush them with constant failure. So what you do is aim high and make the goal difficult but proximal. So anyways, so that's one way of looking at it. But then the next thing is, I've had clients, many clients in their 30s, who are trying to. This is more true with women, I would say. A lot of women who are very high achieving and who established their career goals at 30 and then want to differentiate out their life. They want to have a husband, they want to have a family, they're trying to figure out how to do that. And one of the things I've noticed that around 30, you really have to stop comparing yourself in some ways to other people. And the reason for that is that the particularities of your life are so idiosyncratic that there isn't anyone really all that much like you, because the details of your life happen to matter. And so maybe you compare yourself to some rock star or something like that, and the person's rich and famous and glamorous and all that, but they're alcoholic and they use too much cocaine and they've had 3 divorces, and it's like, how the hell do you make sense out of that? Is that someone that you should judge yourself harshly against or not? The answer is you don't know, because you don't know all the details of their lives. And who do you know that you can compare yourself to? That's easy. You. Yesterday. So here's a good goal. It's something like, well, aim high. And I really mean that. It's like, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Aim high, but use as your control yourself. It's like, so your goal is to make today some tiny increment better than yesterday. And you can use better. You can define better yourself. This doesn't have to be some imposition of external morality. You know where you're weak and insufficient, where you could improve. Think, okay, well, this is what I'm like yesterday. If I did this little thing, things would be just an increment better. And, well, that's a great thing because you get the ball rolling, and incremental improvement is unstoppable. You can actually implement it, and it starts to generate Pareto distribution-like consequences. It starts to compound. And I've seen that happen in people's lives over and over. People write me all the time and tell me that they're doing that, but I've seen that happen in people's lives continually. They make a goal that the goal should be, how could I conceive of my life so that if I had that life, it would clearly be worth living, so I wouldn't have to be bitter, resentful, deceitful, arrogant, and vengeful. Like, that's sort of the bottom line, right? Because that's what endless failure does to you. It's not good. And that's what life without purpose and a goal does to you as well, because life is very hard. So you think, okay, well, I need to adopt a mode of being that would justify my suffering. And you can ask yourself that question. What would make this worthwhile? I quote Nietzsche, I think, in that chapter. He said, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." That's a lovely line, man. I mean, it's a lovely line. And it's really worth thinking about. So you think, well, how do I manage all this misery and suffering and futility? It's like, well, I need to figure out what I would have to do in order to make that clearly worthwhile. And so then you have your goal, and then you think, well, I need to move towards that incrementally because I'm kind of useless and can only do so much, and maybe not even that. But all I have to do is be a little bit better than my miserable self yesterday. And that'll propel you forward very rapidly. And you can succeed at it, which is also really lovely, because why not set yourself up for success, because otherwise you'll droop around like a number 10 lobster. And, that's just not good. You get all pinchy when that happens. And it's not a good thing.
Appreciate your accomplishments. Appreciate your potential. Knowing that in one day you completed all you set out to do. Fueling your ambition by fueling your appreciation of yourself. Self-expression. Isn't self-expression really self-direction? How you think, how you move, how you motivate yourself? It is. And ambition is a result of self-direction. Positive self-direction says, I know who I am and I know where I want to go. I am accumulating knowledge and experiences and feelings and philosophies that will help prepare me for opportunities that I know will show up without notice. Positive self-direction. You know who you are and where you want to go. You've already spent a great deal of time thinking about it. You've been working on the parts of your personality that will make you better. Working on your attitude. Working on your health. Working on your time management skills. Putting it all down on paper. And you constantly see yourself in the place that you want to be. As you talk with yourself every day, how often do you ask, is what I am doing today getting me closer to where I want to be tomorrow? Am I making the daily adjustments necessary? Am I doing all that it takes? Will I keep on doing it until? Direction determines destination. Here's a question you need to ask yourself. Are all of the disciplines that I'm currently engaged in taking me where I want to go? Are all of the disciplines I am presently engaged in taking me where I want to go? What an important question at the beginning of the month, at the beginning of the week, at the beginning of the day. Because here's what you don't want to ever do. Kid yourself. You know, kid your neighbor and kid me and kid the marketplace if you want to, but gosh, you can't kid yourself. With your fingers crossed hoping you'll arrive at a good destination when you're not even headed that way. You say, well, maybe the wind will take me. Well, there's a chance. But you've got to take charge. You've got to ask yourself often, am I? Am I doing the disciplines that are taking me in the direction that I want to go? I don't want to be faked out here and think I'm on the way to financial success when there's not a prayer, not a hope. I don't want to be faked out hoping that there's someone else who's going to take care of it. Take care of me. They're not going to take care of it. They're not going to take care of me. What if all of your negative relatives turn positive? What'll that do for your fortune and your future? Not much. If prices come down a little, what'll that do for your fortune and your future and your sophistication and your culture? What'll that do? Not much. If the economy gets a little better, what'll that do? Answer, not much. If you don't make plans of your own, you'll fit into someone else's plans. And guess what they have planned for you? You're right. Not much. Most people wake up every morning counting on this not much list. And that's why what they have is not much. Not much hope, not much promise, not much progress. They're driving what they don't want to drive, living where they don't want to live, doing what they don't want to do.
Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. The ultimate failure. Because if you go at something and you fail and you're an achiever, you don't fail. You go, I learned something, I'll just try something else. I'm going to still get there. But when you succeed and you're not happy, you're technically screwed. So a perfect example of this, I mentioned in the seminar you were there because it hit me about a year and a month ago, we lost what I consider a national treasure, Robin Williams. And I asked people, how many of you love Robin Williams? Everybody raised their hand all around the world, right? He made people laugh, people were touched by him. So how good was he at the science of achievement? I mean, he wanted to be a great comedian and make the whole world laugh, he did. He wanted to have his own TV show, he did. He wanted the #1 show, he did it. He wanted to make movies, he did. He wanted to have an Academy Award for not being funny, dramatic, and he did it, right?
He did it, yeah.
He said he wanted a beautiful family. He achieved everything, and he hung himself.
That's crazy.
And I know recently someone's saying, well, you know, he had dementia, drug abuse, he had alcohol abuse through most of his life because he made everybody happy but whom?
Himself.
That's the ultimate failure.